So, good evening in India and good morning in Brazil and Mexico. At the outset, I would like to invite you all to this academic evening wherein we are going to discuss SICS with our Brazilian friends. A big thank you to Dr. Neto for this wonderful initiative. So, we have with us Dr. Amulya Sahu, sir, who is founder chairman of ISMSICS. Sir, we would like to hear from you few words of wisdom.
I think his net
Looks like sir's internet is not very good. So we will take his comments later. So next, Dr. Jagannath Boramani sir, who is executive chairman of ISMSICS, will be joining us shortly. We have with us Dr. Parikshit Gokte sir, who is vice chairman of ISMSICS. Parikshit sir, over to you for your comments.
Morning and good evening. At the outset, I would like to congratulate all the team for having this wonderful webinar in Mexico and Brazil. Well, I'm sorry, I don't speak any Spanish or Portuguese, but it is so good that you are all trying to popularize manual small incision surgery in your countries. And I think manual small incision surgery has a great role to play in countries where there is a huge backlog of blindness. And as Dr. Boramani and so many of stalwarts have shown, that for management of astigmatism and giving good unaided both distance and near visual acuity, SICS is as good as any other technique, whether it's femto-assisted laser cataract surgery, FLACS, or phacoemulsification. So, well, I think without much ado, we should continue with this.
Yeah. So, Dr. Sahu sir is back. Sir, would you like to share some pearls of wisdom with us? Sahu sir. Okay. I think he's not able to hear us well. So we have with us Dr. Neto, who is chairman of Brazil chapter of ISMSICS. Over to you, Dr. Neto.
Hello, my dear friends. It's so nice to be here with you, and I thank you all for being present here and a wonderful team of experts to talk about MSICS. And it's a great joy for me to be helping in this webinar and helping spread the word about MSICS, because it's a very important technique that all surgeons should learn. I'll talk about it in a few minutes. And I mostly thank Dr. Amulya Sahu for having invited me to participate and be part of this wonderful organization. And so I hope we will be very successful in spread the word of MSICS all over the world. And that's our main goal here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. So chairing this session along with Dr. Sahu and Dr. Boramani is Dr. Prakash Marathe, sir, who is chairman of Maharashtra chapter of ISMSICS. Over to you, Marathe, sir.
Hello, good evening and good morning, everyone. It's my proud privilege to be part of this wonderful webinar, that is an international webinar in the country of Brazil and even Mexico. And all Indian stalwarts are here and who have been doing a wonderful job in relation to SICS. I wish all the success and all the best for this webinar, and the mission of small incision cataract surgery over the world will be continued by this. Thank you so much.
Next, we have with us Dr. Anil Shah, sir, who is president of Maharashtra chapter of ISMSICS. Over to you, Anil Shah, sir.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, I am really very happy to be the part of International Society of Manual Small Incision Cataract Surgery. Slowly, the manual small incision cataract surgery is spreading all over the country, and it has taken a big role in surgical cataract surgery. Phaco is a surgery where we get various types of situation, but in complicated cases where phaco cannot be worked, in that situation, SICS is one of the best technique which is available, and because of that, we can do all the complicated cataract surgeries. Here in this Brazil chapter, we have a Dr. Neto, who is one of the fastest surgeon in Brazil, and also in the world, who is doing wonderful phaco surgery. And he has taken initiative for small incision cataract surgery, and that is a great thing for our society to spread small incision cataract surgery in Brazil. I hope his team will definitely take initiative and make this Brazil chapter a good thing to learn for all of us and all the Brazilian doctors also. Thank you very much for inviting and giving me opportunity to express my view. Thank you very much.
So Dr. Liang from Brazil was supposed to moderate this session along with me, but due to some family emergency, he won't be able to join us. So without further delay, we'll start with the academic session. First, I invite Dr. Neto to share his presentation and start his talk. A quick reminder till the time we set the screen to our audience that if you have any question, you can put in the chat box and we will discuss it towards the end of the talk. Over to you, Dr. Neto.
Okay. Is it okay? My presentation is playing?
Yes, your presentation is
Yeah,
visible.
we can see it clearly, sir.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I am very glad to be able to talk here, as I would like to take advantage of the opportunity to pass on an important take-home message for both beginner and experienced surgeons. Why you, phaco surgeon, should learn MSICS. This will be a very simple and straightforward presentation directed to call attention to the importance of learning MSICS. But first, what is MSICS? The acronym stands for Manual Small Incision Cataract Surgery, but it is a misnomer. It is usually used to refer to manual cataract surgery performed via some scleral tunnel, mostly sutureless, and with a wide range of incision size, not only small or under 3 millimeters in width. Many surgeons are unaware that after phacoemulsification became the dominant trend in many countries, manual cataract surgery continued its evolution into MSICS. Various new manual techniques were devised, and the surgery went through a paradigm shift with advanced scleral tunnel techniques, which provided enhanced safety, minimal surgical induced astigmatism, and no need for suturing. Some MSICS techniques are performed with under 3 millimeter incision width, with topical anesthesia and under very fast surgical time. This was a real revolution in manual cataract surgery. So, what would a common MSICS scleral tunnel look like? This is it. It has a trapezoidal shape with a slighted frowned external aperture distant 1.5 millimeters from the limbus and advancing 1.5 millimeters into the cornea with deep pockets at the sides, making the internal aperture bigger than the external one. The external aperture width usually varies between 7 to 9 millimeters, although several MSICS variants employ nucleofragmentation techniques featuring very small incision sizes. MSICS considerable tunnel length provides watertightness, low astigmatism induction, and safety. Many studies have shown that current MSICS techniques have comparable results to phaco concerning visual outcome, inflammatory response, safety, surgical complications, and other aspects. There are many reasons a surgeon may opt for MSICS instead of phacoemulsification, ranging from cost issues, eye conditions better approached with MSICS, surgery conversion in phaco complications, and even personal preference. MSICS is way cheaper than phaco surgery, often 10 times cheaper. No phaco machine needed, minimal and very affordable consumables, the possibility of using cheaper rigid IOLs, etc. This affordability makes MSICS the ideal choice for prevention of blindness programs in developing countries and economically challenged circumstances. Here are some eye conditions where MSICS provides a degree of safety and feasibility that phaco can't offer. Corneal endothelium diseases, compromised zonules and subluxated lens, very hard cataracts, IOL exchange, anterior chamber visualization issues, and many others. Of course, even experienced surgeons benefit from going MSICS in these conditions. Similarly, conversion to MSICS better manages many phaco intraoperative situations or complications. The cataract surgeon must know how to properly convert to MSICS in these cases. Many surgeons perform MSICS routinely and exclusively in their practice, with outstanding surgical outcomes comparable to phaco surgery. The use of premium IOLs with predictable results is possible with the added benefit of a more affordable surgery. So, as a take-home message, MSICS is not a lesser surgery. It is an excellent alternative to approach many difficult situations in cataract surgery, and it definitely should be part of every cataract surgeon's armamentarium. Only by being proficient in both phaco and manual cataract surgery can one achieve the status of a true master cataract surgeon. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Neto. So we had an excellent start. So we'll be taking the questions after we finish 3 talks. So next, I would like to invite Dr. Neeta Dodwad ma'am to talk to us about basics of MSICS. She is Medical Director of Brahma Netralaya in Mumbai. Over to you, Neeta ma'am.
Thank you, Aarti. Very good evening and good morning, everyone. I really feel honored and humbled to be part of this webinar series. I'm grateful to Dr. Sahu sir, Dr. Boramani sir for this opportunity. Respected dignitaries, chairperson, co-chairman, and the panelists, today I'll be talking on the basic overview of SICS surgery and the basic steps for the beginners. Few important points of a preparation before actually starting the surgery for the beginners would be first selection of the patient. Select well-dilated pupil and grade 2 to 3 nuclear sclerosis. Proper anesthesia. If you see well, you perform well. So set your microscope right just before the surgery. Mentally preparing each and every step of the surgery will definitely make you calm and more focused to perform the surgery. The first step of the SICS is periotomy. So what is the purpose of the periotomy? Is to give a better visualization and exposure of the surgical site. The conjunctiva and the tenons are held together with the limbs forceps. Initial cut is given with the conjunctival scissor and the conjunctiva is cut at the limbus. Minimal conjunctival periotomy is better, just maybe 1 or 2 hours more than your planned incision, and a minimal cautery to prevent the further astigmatism. Coming to the next step of the SICS surgery is sclerocorneal tunnel creation. It is the most important and the foundation step for the successful outcome of the surgery. It has essentially three components. First is the external groove. Second is dissection into the sclerocorneal tunnel. And third is the entry into the anterior chamber. I'll go through an animated video to show the details of the sclerocorneal tunnel. So external incision is done with the scalpel bed 1 to 2 mm away from the limbus. Once you get the correct depth of...
Dr. Neeta, ma'am, sorry for the interruption. We can't see the video.
Okay. Now can you see?
No.
I think you have to make it full screen.
No, I think you should show it separately, doctor.
No problem.
Or full screen. Try full screen.
Go through the simple video. This is the diagrammatic presentation of the sclerocorneal tunnel. Scleral groove is done. Then half thickness scleral dissection. Here, the direction of your scleral blade should be parallel to the sclera. Once you come to the cornea, the direction of your crescent knife becomes parallel to the cornea. And while doing the anterior chamber entry, the keratome entry should be parallel to the iris. So, in this way, corneal wall created by the triplanar incision will give the self-sealing property. So, in the video, we see external scleral groove. Once you get correct depth of the incision, the crescent knife is introduced into the sclerocorneal tunnel. By wiggling movements, the tunnel dissection is completed on both the sides and forming the scleral pockets at the lateral end. While doing the anterior chamber entry, keep the keratome horizontal. Go at the posterior end of the tunnel, enter into the anterior chamber and incise the corneal lip when you're moving forward. Another important step once you create a good sclerocorneal tunnel is capsulorhexis. In this, important thing is, since the SICS surgery is a very forgiving surgery, even if you go for a capsulotomy or a can opener, still you continue with the rhexis. So here we see a side port entry. Important point, all the time maintain the anterior chamber depth. And once you create the initial incision on the anterior capsule, then by circular motion complete the rhexis. In SICS, the CCC has to be larger as compared to phaco for the complete delivery of the nucleus. Coming to hydro procedure. So what is the purpose of hydro procedure? Is to loosen the bond between the anterior capsule and the cortex, and also the separation of endonucleus and epinucleus. It is done with the help of hydrocannula. Here we see a hydrocannula mounted on a 5 ml BSS or a normal saline. Lift the anterior capsule and with the guided injection of the BSS, the nucleus and the cortex is separated. These hydro procedures help us to get the hydroprolapse of the nucleus and easy removal of the cortex as well. Coming to the important and the different aspect of the SICS surgery is a nucleus delivery. The surgical goal of the nucleus delivery is the safe delivery of the nucleus through the sclerocorneal tunnel while protecting the corneal endothelium anteriorly and posterior capsule and the iris posteriorly. The nucleus delivery has two components. One is nucleus prolapse from the capsular bag to the anterior capsule. This can be done, as I showed, the hydroprolapse by force injection of the BSS fluid by the hydrocannula. Second, the mechanical hydroprolapse with the help of Simsky hook. Once the nucleus is into the anterior chamber, then the extraction of the nucleus from the anterior chamber. There are different techniques for the nucleus delivery, mainly categorized into pulling technique and the pushing technique. In pulling technique, the external force pulls the nucleus out of the anterior chamber. Fish hook technique, Vectis delivery of the nucleus, Pecco sandwich and serrated forceps technique is called pulling technique. Next important is the pushing technique, in which the positive pressure in the anterior chamber pushes the nucleus outside the anterior chamber. This positive pressure can be achieved with the help of AC maintainer, nucleus delivery with the irrigating vectors, or with the help of visco expression. So if your incision is large and the nucleus is hard, the nucleus easily comes in one way. But if you are doing a customized incision surgery where your incision is small and the nucleus is hard, this is the endo expression of the nucleus. It is innovated and practiced by Dr. Boramani, where the side through the side port, the vectis, the Simsky hook is introduced, and guided push helps the beautiful delivery of the nucleus through relatively small incision. Once the nucleus is out, the remnants of a cortex and nuclear pieces is taken out. Mainly in SICS surgery, we do cortical wash with the Simcoe cannula. It has the irrigation port and the aspiration port, and which is handled manually. Or else you can do a bimanual irrigation and aspiration also. Important point here is to maintain the anterior chamber depth. Once we lift the anterior part of the incision, the anterior chamber deepens. Next and the last important step of the SICS is the IOL implantation, PMMA IOL, which is fold at the optic. The leading haptic is introduced into the back, followed by the trailing haptic introduced into the back. Remember to give a thorough visco wash at the end of the IOL implantation. The Simcoe cannula can be introduced below the IOL also to take out all the visco. Check the wound integrity at the end by a stromal hydration and closure of the conjunctiva with the thermal cortex. So thank you very much. I really want to acknowledge Dr. Sahu sir, Dr. Boramani sir for providing his extra videos, Dr. Aarti Heda and Dr. Manik. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Neeta. That was really a wonderful talk. So now we have learned why should we know SICS and basics of SICS. So let's move on to a step ahead, wherein we are going to talk about how MSICS can be a savior to us. So I invite Dr. MS Ravindra sir for his presentation. Over to you, Ravindra sir.
Good evening here and good morning to President Mexico. I'm so happy and privileged to be part of this program. Can you hear me, Dr. Heda?
Very well, sir.
Can you see the video?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All clear.
Fine. Okay. So there are so many kinds of SICS, and the one I practice is what you see right now, and that's a young patient with posterior polar cataract. Is a nightmare for any cataract surgeon. Let us see how we can manage it. This is a direct incision from the sclera through conjunctiva. I'm not making a separate incision. That's the cystotome, which is perforated through the floor of the tunnel at the limbus, and the AC is filled with HPMC, and then there is no leak of HPMC from inside the eye to outside. So that makes the rhexis very good. I'm not such a fast surgeon, but it's 2 times and sometimes 3 times speed. What I would like to stop here is I've done a hydrodissection. I'll just go back. I've done a hydrodissection, which is a taboo in a posterior polar cataract. As you can see here, hydrodissection separates the capsule and the peripheral cortex, and the fluid has to be absolutely under control. The tunnel has to be open. You can see the hydrodissection wave has separated the plaque from the posterior capsule. It's not a perforation there, but you see a beautiful crescent-like clear area. And if I pressurize the eye anterior chamber at this point of time, all the pressure will fall on this area, and that's going to tear. So the low pressure and low flow technique of SICs is a savior here. I'm going to rotate the entire nucleus, epinucleus, and some amount of cortex, which is again a taboo in cataract surgery, but this can be done in SICs. This is a young patient, so cortex, epinucleus, nucleus are all softer. I'm going to push it out of the tunnel with positive pressure and ensuring that the posterior capsule is not ballooned backwards. If I balloon it, I may tear it. So that's the maneuvers that I'm going to do. And then the rest of it is very easy. Again, chamber is not pressurized. It's almost normal intraocular pressure, 15, 20, whatever it is. And cortical aspiration is done completely. PC is very thin in this patient, as you know, but then it's not this thing. You watch another video at the end of this 7 minutes talk, and I'll explain slightly different one. That's a coloboma, which is again, there is a deficiency of zonules in the lower part. I'm going temporarily, very hard nucleus, and I always start the rexis beyond the colobomatous area for the fear that I may run it off here. In some patients have done it. So I always started beyond that and then complete it. It's very nice to see whether the capsule is still attached here. So you can see it's still attached. So I'll have to aspirate it out, do a very good hydrodissection. The hard nucleus, I prolapsed bimanually into the anterior chamber. Try to bisect it the way I normally do it, but it's not cutting. I use a cystotome which is on the table. So cystotome is mounted on a 2 ml syringe with HPMC, which continuously infuses. It's very important to protect the endothelium in any of these techniques because we're working very close to endothelium, and the aim of a good surgery is having crystal clear cornea on day one. That's what you should aim at, and you will be able to achieve it. There are dozens of steps where you can damage the endothelium, which should not be doing it. White reflex is because of the chorioretinal colobomas, and then put the lens inside the capsular bag. And if you take a photograph, if the light reflex is being covered by the iris, I always do a superior sphincterotomy so that it opens up and patient will have wonderful vision. Small people, hypermature cataract, same technique, all done under topical anesthesia. And in this patient, you would certainly need intracameral 1% lignocaine infused and trying to make a smaller axis. This is really useful because ACA remains formed. There's no leak there. And this is Dr. Nito's technique, where he rotated to loosen the cortex. And then here I'm enlarging the internal opening. External opening is 5.2 millimeters. That's of the keratome. Sometimes I enlarge that too, depending upon the size of the nucleus. Internal opening is enlarged. Then I'm making a nick of the capsular edge after decompressing the capsular bag and do a second rexis. I'm not worried about the pupil, which is smaller. And, in SICs, you don't really have to have a very large pupil in every case. It's possible to do SICs. It's possible to do rexis under the edge of the pupil. And you'll have to be a little cautious that it won't run to the periphery. By manually lift it up into the anterior chamber. As you can see, I rotate it into the anterior chamber. Again, it's going to be a hard nucleus. I'll have to take the help of cystotome here. I've devised many cutting instruments, but there's nothing like a cystotome, which is on the table already and which is extremely sharp. Only thing is support it, and there should be a continuous infusion of visco, in front of the nucleus. So hold it up and remove it. The first injection is always to separate the nucleus from the endothelium. And even in this case, the endothelium is going to be very clear on day one without any striate. Complete cortical aspiration is a must in all cataract surgeries because much of the postoperative inflammation is because of remaining, cortical material. You can always you can go 360 degrees with the aspirating instrument and then enjoy it. And also rotation of the lens itself. That's a multifocal lens. It's a beautiful multifocal lenses made in India. Rotate it so that the cortex comes back. There's a festooned pupil, again, a small pupil. this coated with um, stained with trypan blue, and I'm releasing the Cynic A, but it still doesn't dilate to the extent that's comfortable for a cataract surgery. I'm going to, with 2 instruments, I'm going to stretch it out. And some of these pupils don't dilate even if you stretch like that. So I do a very tiny sphincterotomies, multiple all around. I prefer this over pupillary dilating devices for various reasons. So that's very tiny. Post-operatively, cosmetically, it doesn't affect at all. Pupil dilates much better than before. So retinal specialists will be very, very happy that we have dilated the pupil to some extent. And as you can see here, do a good rhexis, hydrodissection, remove the nucleus, and put the lens inside the capsular bag after aspirating the cortex. So these are tough cases. Of course, you can do with, that's a Nito's chopper, round ball chopper. I dilate and see whether the capsular bag is really empty of cortical material. This is a video that I would like you to watch. Very ugly looking cataract, posterior capsular. Patient has a huge cylindrical power. I've chosen to put a toric lens in this patient. Posterior, classical posterior capsular or posterior polar cataract, which can tear. And I'm not worried about it with this technique, where I don't pressurize the anterior chamber, or I don't, that's a hydrodissection again, very, very small amount. I've removed the cataract. Watch it. I'm going to put the lens inside, toric lens inside the capsular bag. Watch it again. Keep watching it. I've aligned it to the axis. I'm deepening the chamber at the end of it. It's a, see, that's still softer, still softer. I wanted it a little more deeper, still soft. See there, a beautiful classical tear in the posterior capsule at this point of time. This comes to prove, luckily this happened after I put the lens, and I could manage pushing the posterior capsule throughout the surgery, but at the end of surgery, when I wanted to deepen the chamber, I have a tear. So this proves that if you do the surgery under low pressure, low fluidics, you can really save the posterior capsule even in these cases. I'm through, Dr. Heda. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I should say, wow. Really wonderful surgical video, sir, and a lot of learning for all of us. So, Sao sir is back. So, we would like to hear, sir, from you.
You saw one of the best surgeon, SIC surgeon, doing some extraordinary surgery. I think all over the globe, I think people should watch it and see what we can do with SICS. So we are having a master here. Thank you, Ravindra.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I'm blessed.
Marathe sir, would you like to comment on the first 3 talks?
Yeah, I think it was a wonderful presentation by all those 3 speakers. They are masters, and nothing to say about Ravindra sir. Fantastic videos. And even Nita Dudwad, all those steps needed for even seniors and juniors to learn all those things in SICS. And Dr. Nito, it was very nice. You are the complete surgeon, what I came to know. My simple and straightforward question to you is, suppose you have got a patient in your family with clean cataract, with no special thing in that, nothing extra in that. So, and about the financial constraints also, there is no problem. Which procedure will you choose, HIP or SICS?
I'm sorry, I don't know if I understood it correctly. You're asking if I had a patient from my family, yeah?
Yeah.
With, let's say, a routine cataract, which technique I would choose? Is that the question?
No financial constraints. Yeah.
Yes, that's
Okay.
the concern. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, I've been doing phaco for almost 30 years now, and I'm just, let's say, when I finished residency, we were doing extracapsular cataract surgery. And right after that, I started doing extracapsular through the scleral tunnel. and fragmentation technique, but a different tunnel from than the one we use in MSICS. And then I started phaco, and almost all this time I did phaco, although I did extracapsular cataract surgery in selected cases. But most recently, I've begun to do MSICS, and I'm far from the level of all the experts here. I'm really a beginner in MSICS, so I'm not that proficient, unfortunately, but I'm working hard to get better in my MSICS skills. So I would choose phaco because of my, let's say, surgical background, but it has been clearly demonstrated by Dr. Ravindra how efficient, how effective MSICS can be, even if your goal is to use premium IOLs. If you want to use multifocal IOLs, toric IOLs, you have an outstanding result with a very gentle surgery for that. That's the main difference of, let's say, if you would compare MSICS to phaco, as Dr. Ravindra said, MSICS is a low-pressure surgery. It's very gentle to the eye. So this is something that phaco has no way to compare. In many ways, it's much better. But let's say I should need to learn more.
Thank you, Dr.
Let's
Nito.
say, to get my skills better in MSICS to be as confident as all of you.
In continuity with this, I think it is as the MSICS session, and experts like Dr. Sahu sir and Dr. Ravindra sir is there. Whatever the case may be, Dr. Ravindra would handle that in MSICS way, and I'm sure about it. And even Dr. Sahu. Over to you, Dr. Ravindra.
But by the way, Neto, Ravindra is among the first phaco surgeons in India, and he's a trained vitreoretinal surgeon. So that he gave up phaco because he feels that he can do a better job in MSICS. So that is why he is a MSICS son to start with, as we all of are. We started with phaco, but now I think one of these days Neto will be amongst the masters in the world, in MSICS. He is such a keen surgeon. So, and you are doing a wonderful job in Brazil for MSICS. We really appreciate that.
Ravindra sir, your opinion, please.
Yes, I fully agree with what Dr. Nito said and what Dr. Amulya said. That first I'm going to talk to youngsters, and youngsters have fascination for phacoemulsification. They keep buying better and better machines, and on a video it looks much better. So when you see a video of phacoemulsification versus SICS, hats off to the way it looks. It's very neat and clean, and especially if you want to show your own skills, and that's the best way to do it. SICS, there are issues where the bleeding is occurring. You're making a larger incisions, but ultimately, what I'm talking is 1 day post-op or 1 week post-op or a month post-op. We have done a lot of them. We have the best of phaco machines in our hospital and best of phaco surgeons. But when the team divides the cases, post cases to different surgeons, all tough cases they post to me. Naturally, the phacoemulsification, the surgeons that my colleagues, my children are eye specialists today, and they would like to choose nice cases for phacoemulsification, while all the problem cases that you saw are posted to me. That itself says that the versatility of the surgery is much more, and the safety margin is much more in challenging cases. So I have videos where there is probably about 80% loss of zonules, but I can still manage to do a rhexis and remove the cataract and do whatever that's needed. So these are the versatility of SICS. My earnest request to all the people, it's not only the video that looks better, the trade wants us to do phacoemulsification. So they are, they're lost, their economics, it goes to south. If people don't do phacoemulsification, they want us to do it. They glorify And if there are 10 videos shown in a conference, 9.5 will be FECO, 1 will be SICS. So these are the current situations. So for these reasons, I would certainly say the youngsters should proficiently manage their cataracts in both the techniques. So not only clean cases come to any hospital, any clinic or hospital, especially in our status, even in Bangalore, in India, which is a larger city, about 50% of the patients have complexities like hypermature cataracts, small pupils, pseudoexfoliations, zonal adhesions. They're very common. So how do you manage them unless you're an expert in SICS? Thank you.
Dr. Pamela, you want to comment something? Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I'm not sure if the situation is right the same in this part of the world. At least in Mexico, surgeons are not prepared for actually dropping phaco. I think phaco it's an excellent technique. Don't get me wrong, I do both techniques. But I do think cataract surgeons, as Dr. Sahu and Dr. Neto says, need to be prepared to do a proficient manual technique. And I do truly believe at the end of the day, the surgeon is the one that's going to make the decision if it's going to be a phaco or MC case, depending on the case he has, on the resources he has, and of his or her mastering that technique. Because what I do not agree with Dr. Devendra is there are no absolute criteria. I mean, any case you can do by M6, you can also do it by phaco. So I think advances in phaco machines are great. I think, and I do love M6, don't get me wrong, it's an excellent technique, and I do M6 in almost 30% of my cases. I teach a lot of M6, but I'm also certain that phaco, it's a great technique. And it is the gold standard, at least in a lot of parts of the world. But I do believe surgeons need to master a manual technique. And in fact, M6 is the best of the manual techniques. So that's the way I think. I think at the end of the day, the surgeon, depending of all of his surroundings, is the one that actually has to make the decision.
Yeah, if you want to be a master, you have to learn both. You cannot be just a phaco surgeon or SICS surgeon. You should be master of both.
Yes, Dr. Neto, maybe you can speak up.
Yes, and Dr. Ravindra has said a lot of important things and a very good picture of our, let's say, cataract surgery panorama concerning the economical issues and the marketing issues, etc. But what I would like to say to to phaco surgeons, especially from Brazil, but all over the world that might be watching us, is well, I can do any case with phaco, but as I started to do MS-ICS and began to get more proficient in it, I employ more and more MS-ICS techniques in my cases because I can see it's better. And one of the things that gets, let's say, gives you confidence is you know that with MS-ICS, you will get the job done. Not so in many cases with phaco. So this is like a very hard cataract, loose zonules. You know that MS-ICS will do the job. And in phaco, you might have big problems. So this is a testimony I give to people that are, let's say, skeptical or not refrain from learning a manual technique that doubt that this will be useful. I would say that there is a saying, a phrase by Keats, the famous English poet, that says, "Nothing ever becomes real until experience." Once you begin to perform MS-ICS, then you can feel, you can see how good it is in many occasions, as it is so good that you know that many expert surgeons prefer doing MSICS in all of his or her cases. So that's, I don't know, that the way that I would like to encourage beginner and expert surgeons to learn this technique, because only when you master manual cataract techniques, you can say, like I said, this is a phrase I stole from Dr. Amulya Sahu. He sent me. Only by learning phaco and by being proficient in phaco and MSICS cataract surgery, a surgeon can say that he's a truly master surgeon. This is from Dr. Amulya Sahu. So I borrowed his phrase. And that's what I would like to pass on.
Yeah. So, is it okay if we move on to the next part of the session? We'll take the another 3 talks and then continue the discussion.
Dr. Sunil was trying to say something.
Yes.
Yeah. See, the biggest problem I see between phaco and SICS, somewhere along the way, people are fighting and saying this is better or that is better. I think both are complementary to each other. And the way SICS was marketed was very poor, and it came from India. It was marketed as the poor man's phaco, and the other big slogan they said was phaco ko phaco. Both don't go well. So it is not a poor man's phaco. You can do it in anybody. And next is you don't throw the phaco. The world is moving to mechanized surgery. You cannot stop that. It is going to progress, and human error is going to go. So it is going. So if you go and tell in a developed world that this is the only way you can do surgery, they're not going to accept you. So I would say better when we market SICS, as Dr. Nato very correctly put it, there are certain cases you just cannot do phaco. So that's where you do it. And as a bailout technique, when your phaco fails on you, don't continue. You need to bail out. And the best technique is SICS. The best conversion technique is SICS. If we market it this way, there's not going to be much competition. But when you start into this debate about which is better or which is worse, I think both are important. And we have to send that message across. Too often we confuse youngsters as what best to learn. They should learn both.
So, see, one point I want to tell, that none of the people on our platform says SIC is better than phaco, or we don't encourage. Anybody saying we don't encourage. As I say that it is a science part is there, and MSIC is the art part of it. The science will be there, art will be always be there. So, like a piece of art goes for a premium, so we are calling SICS surgery a premium surgery. So now even our friends are charging more than any phaco surgeon in the country. Then people are paying for it because they are assuring excellent result. If MS Ravindra tomorrow charges 2 lakhs for his MSICS, nobody will resist it. Because earlier we are marketing the machine, now we want people to market the surgeon. If you are surgeon like Nato must have his price. If a lawyer can say I can charge 1 crore for one sitting, why not a wonderful surgeon like Nato charge his price? He said I charge 5 lakhs for this thing, people will pay. Because we are underestimating ourselves, we are running down ourselves, and people don't value us. You fix your price and people are there to pay. If you are assured of a result, people are not coming to you for your machine, they are coming for a good result. And you assure them a good eyesight, ask your price and people will pay. So that is our statement on our platform is that art and science will stay. People will always be there for art, and there will be people who go for science, and nobody is better than the other. They have their own values. Price fixation is surgeon's choice, and it will be surgeon centric, not machine centric. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Sunil, sir, to talk to us about tips on SICS tunnel construction.
So,
Over to
can
you,
I,
Sanithan.
can I just share my screen? Yeah. One minute. Yeah, it's got a voice. Let me thank the Brazilian chapter of the ISMSICS and Dr. Neto Resetelli and Dr. Amalya Sahu for inviting me for this talk on wound construction. So obviously you have to have good anesthesia, good exposure. You may or may not use a bridal suture. Maybe a good idea to use a bridal suture when you are starting off with SICS. And the head position is very, very important. If your neck is flexed too much, then you will land up with a superficial dissection. And if it is too much extended, you may prematurely enter into the anterior chamber. Now the peritomy, do a small vertical cut and then cut flush with the limbus. And don't make a small peritomy. Try to make a largish peritomy so that you have enough exposure. Now the initial incision, you can have any configuration. It should be about 1/3 to half thickness of the sclera. Use a 15 number blade, Bart Parker knife, or better, if you have access, use a guarded depth blade, which is around 300 microns. So SICS, you remember, is actually sutureless large incision cataract surgery. So don't make too small an incision initially and try to get out a very large nucleus, because that doesn't follow the laws of physics. Now the center of the incision is usually 1 to 2 millimeters away from the limbus and the ends around 2 to 4 millimeters. And use your non-dominant hand with any fixation forceps holding on to the tenons for fixation. Now this video is very important. So see, I'm using a Bart Parker knife and the limbs is used for fixation on the tenons capsule. I go with one motion, but this comes out of experience and the feel. And these are the basic measurements. So I'm about 1/3 to half thickness of the sclera. Now when I take my crescent blade, I am going across the entire posterior part of the incision and making a groove at the same plane. And look at this. When I am initially going with the posterior part of the incision, my blade is facing forwards and it is facing downwards, and the base of the blade is up. Please. So this is very important. When you go a little more into the sclera, you straighten out the blade and make it. So basically you're following the contour of the globe. So now the base is coming down, this is going straight, and once you reach the cornea, the crescent blade actually starts going upwards and the base comes further downwards. And your dissection is essentially slightly forwards, but essentially backwards and sidewards, backwards and sidewards. This is to avoid premature entry into the anterior chamber. Look at this. It's always backwards, sidewards, backwards, sidewards. This is very important. This motion you have to get. And then check the length of your corneal tunnel dissection. Your scleral tunnel is okay here. This should be around 1.5 to 2 millimeters into the clear cornea. That's the corneal valve. Having done that, you go in with your paracenthesis, that is the side port blade, make a paracenthesis 90 degrees away from this main incision, go full thickness, and here I'm holding on to this limbus here, and I'm swiveling with my keratome into the incision. And then I dimple into that internal incision and go into the anterior chamber. I will not enlarge the incision at this point in time. I will enlarge it only after the rhexis. Again I swivel, putting the keratome down on the sclera, swiveling inside, and look at the blade. The blade is facing tangential to the internal incision, not lamellar like this. Don't make it too sidewards. Don't turn the blade too sidewards. You will start dissecting lamellarly and having a lot of tissue actually attached in the periphery. And you will be wondering why the nucleus is not come. That is not coming out because your wound is not open. So that's very important. That's a common mistake made by beginners. I'm going through the whole exercise again actually. This is the initial incision, just showing you with this guarded knife. And this is very easy for beginners. It will not allow you to make a deep incision. which is a common thing when you're using the Bard Parker knife. And when you use the Bard Parker knife, this is more of a feel, and that's why it can be difficult in the initial stages. So I've already told you all these things about how you dissect the tunnel. First the posterior part, you then turn it straight, dissect further into the sclera, then turn it upwards and go into the cornea, and your movements are essentially forwards, sidewards and backwards. Very minimal forward movement. This is to avoid premature entry into the chamber. And this is again the paracentesis and the entry with the keratome, nothing much to again reiterate. And just don't, and now when you're opening up the incision, again I'm going to show you this, I've shown this before. So basically you swivel into the incision, open up the incision facing the blade tangential to the internal opening. You can hold on to the wound. By and large, try to avoid holding on to the wound and open up the incision completely. And sometimes you can have a superficial dissection. The way to recognize that is when there is bunching up of tissues or buttonholing, or if the crescent is very visible. Now these are two cases where I had superficial dissection. So I just deepen that incision, that initial groove, and I go in through that and make another incision under this superficial dissection. This will come with little bit of training. And you can also make a deep dissection, and obviously when the uvea prolapses, you've already gone into the wound. And this is one such example. You can see the uveal show here, and I am dissecting out a flap from that superficial flap. So very tough to do, but you will get it. And sometimes you can have such a bad dissection that the whole thing is open up. Better to suture it and convert it to phaco. And this is another fairly rare mistake. When you go too posteriorly and make your incision, then you have a very large tunnel. Becomes very difficult for intraocular maneuvers and to bring out your nucleus. All you have to do is cut the sides of the tunnel and shift the posterior part of your tunnel anteriorly, thereby shortening this tunnel. Thank you so much for listening to this entire discourse. Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent.
So next I would like to invite Dr. Deepak Meghur sir, who is going to talk to us about tips on phaco to MS-ICS conversion. I'm sure this will be of interest to many of us. Over to you, Deepak Meghur sir.
Thank you, Dr. Harti and Dr. Nito for having me here on this session. So my topic is a little bit less. My screen is visible, right?
Yes, sir. It's visible.
I am audible?
Yes, very well, sir.
So my topic is less controversial because when we want to convert from phaco because of an intraoperative difficulty, I think there's no debate. MSIS is the best way to go ahead. So this is one situation where I'm having trouble in phacoemulsification. So during nucleus chopping maneuvers, I have suspecting that there.
So I have this free fragment which is pulled out of the bag and is being emulsified. At this moment, I get a sense that something is wrong. This nuclear fragment is appearing slightly deeper. Let me check, I thought. I came out, injected OVD, and well, I can see that this fragment is definitely at a lower level. I use my Sinski just to feel it, and it seems that my worst fears are coming true. I'm looking for any visible posterior capsule tear, although the posterior capsule tear could not be made out, but there are all the signs which are definitely suggestive of an underlying posterior capsule tear. And if that is true, then I may be dealing with an impending nucleus drop. So I'm pushing dispersive OVD under the nuclear fragment. I'm just trying to figure out the extent of the PC tear, and I'm trying to maneuver the lens fragment out of the bag. In this process, the thin lens fiber which was connecting the two heminucleus, which I had not noticed initially, just snapped. And now I could sense that the smaller fragment has gone still posterior. Well, it is not looking good at all now. The nuclear fragment looks like it is descending down, and at this moment I'm thinking, Should I close the case and let my retinal colleague deal with this later? In fact, I stop everything and thinking for about a minute on how to go about. And then I decide to go ahead and remove at least the anterior heminucleus and then see how things go. So I'm pushing dispersive OVD under the nuclear fragment. Now, since the heminucleus is quite large and bulky, I decide to make a fresh scleral tunnel incision in the superior quadrant. Mind you, I was sitting temporarily for the phacoemulsification. So I shift superiorly, give a subconch lignocaine, raise a small bleb, then make a conjunctival flap, and then using a blunt cannula, inject 1 ml of lignocaine in the posterior subtenon space. Augmenting anesthesia is critical as I know that this surgery can take some time now. A scleral groove is created and using a crescent knife, a sclerocorneal tunnel is created. The tunnel is at a slightly deeper plane when compared to this side port incision which was originally created for the phaco procedure. OVD inside the tunnel demonstrates the nice biconcave structure. The internal entry is done with a sharp keratome and the sclerocorneal tunnel is extended on either side. As soon as the antechamber is entered, there is a momentary shallowing of the anterior chamber. As a result of this, the nuclear fragments have also moved anteriorly. This was a blessing in disguise. Dispersive OVD is injected under the fragments. One fragment has floated up into the anterior chamber. OVD is injected above the fragment and under the corneal endothelium. Using the sandwich technique, the heminucleus is guided out. The second heminucleus has subsequently moved up anteriorly. And again, the same process of injecting dispersive OVD under it is done and it is maneuvered into the antechamber. Using dispersive OVD under the heminucleus is critical because it pushes away any vitreous which is surrounding it and also acts like a barrier. The heminucleus then from the antechamber is expressed out quite easily. OVD is injected into the eye and then I turn on the retroillumination mode. It is evident that there is a huge posterior capsule tear. In fact, I'm not able to see any edge of the posterior capsule tear now. The anterocapsular margin is quite clear all around and there is some cortex yet to be removed. But before attending to the cortex, I need to perform anterivitrectomy first. I create a side port for the cutter. I'm using the original phaco incision for irrigation. I'm holding the cannula in a slanted way to block the big incisions so to minimize any wound leak. Well, this is just a workaround to avoid another side port for the irrigation. So I begin my anterivitrectomy process and in a couple of minutes, the anterivitrectomy is complete and now is the time to remove the cortex. It's important to remember that any remaining epinucleus or cortex has to be dealt with only after the prolapsed vitreous is taken care of. As the cortex is being aspirated, I can see the edges of the tone posterior capsule. Before implanting the IOL, I'm using diluted triamcinolone acetate to check for any remaining vitreous fibril. Well, there are few of them which are then taken care of. I'm using sodium hyaluronate to create some space between the iris and the anterocapsule. A multi-piece hydrophobic IOL is gently slid above the anterocapsule and the proximal haptic is dialed in so that the entire lens is presently above the anterocapsule in the ciliary sulcus. I ensure this by retracting the iris back and visualizing the haptics above the anterocapsule. Using the vitrector, I go behind the lens to remove some of the OVD which has gone behind into the vitreous cavity. Once all the OVD is removed, time to achieve the optic capture. The optic of the lens is gently pushed back posteriorly until we see this ovalization of the rhexis margin, which confirms optic capture wherein the haptics are in the sulcus and the optic is trapped behind the rhexis margin. The side ports are hydrated. I'm using diluted triamcinolone acetate to check for any remaining vitreous fibril. The superior scleral tunnel incision is sutured with a single 10-0 nylon suture to take care of the pre-existing against the astigmatism and also to avoid any postoperative hypotony which we see commonly in eyes which have undergone anterivitrectomy. The conjunctiva is then closed with etovical suture. It's extremely important for me to finish well. I really want to see the eye look really good at the end. So no matter how long the surgery has been, so finishing well is very important. So once done, this is the next day picture. The patient cornea is clear, the pupil is round, the patient has got an excellent visual outcome. So patient continues to do well. We have monitored her for the next 3 months and her unaided vision was 6/9 and best corrected vision.
I think that was my presentation. Thank you for all your attention. One of the other tips which I would like to add on here is always keep an eye on the rhexis. When you want to convert, many times the phaco-rhexis, you have an entire nucleus which is sitting there. You may have to enlarge the rhexis to maneuver the nucleus out. So always never try to navigate through a very small rhexis. So be watchful of that. And the option of switching to a superior or a temporal other side is an option. So if you're comfortable, create a separate incision in the same quadrant which you're sitting, and then always you can go ahead and do it as well. But this is what I prefer. So thank you for attention.
Excellent job. I think a lot to learn.
Thank you so much, Deepak sir. So we move on to our last speaker. I'll invite Dr. Pamela to share her screen. Dr. Pamela is going to talk to us from Mexico about teaching MSICS most common challenges. Over to you, Dr. Pamela.
Thank you, Dr. Archie, and thanks for the kind invitation. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, thank you. So after watching so amazing videos and learning a lot, I want to share just a little bit what I have experienced in all these years doing and teaching M6. So there are so many common challenges when teaching M6, and I think this video explains quite in a good way some of the challenges. So this is a case of one of my fellows. So she was asked to do an M6 case for a combined surgery. It was going to be M6 and vitrectomy. So she started her case, and after a few minutes, they talked to me into the OR that she wanted some help. So when I looked through the microscope, I saw this. So I'm sure you can recognize a bit of problems here. So the first problem is we do have a small pupil, and as Dr. Ravendra says, there are quite a few ways of managing a small pupil, but she didn't manage it at all. She just stayed with a small pupil. So she did a small capsular rhexis. She already had a continuous circular, but as can you see, it is very, very small indeed. And the third thing is she had a tunnel laceration in this part, in the bottom here. So there were quite a few problems to think for continuing in this case. So the first thing I always like to tell all the residents is good visualization is essential. You need to choose whatever technique you want to use for having a good visualization. I'm very fond for iris hoods because I think they give you an excellent view. And in this case, it was a large, dense cataract. We already had a continuous circular, but it was too small. So my goal was to enlarge it. So I just went through it with a Vanna scissor to make a small tear, and afterwards tried to enlarge it with my Utrata forceps. So again, this is not the only way. There are several ways of doing here. You can do a can opener or whatever it is your preferred technique. But I always try to make my residents and myself, if you can go for a continuous circular, go for a continuous circular. It is much better and will allow you to have a stable IOL in the back. So the next problem was the tunnel. Tunnel was too superficial and it was also lacerated. So we had to start a new tunnel. So as Dr. Sonil told us, you need to look for a deeper point. So there are two kinds of problems when you do your tunnel when you're starting. You go too superficial and you can have lacerations, or you go too deep and you can have a premature entry. Sometimes it is not that easy to rescue a tunnel. If you have already a superficial tunnel or lacerated tunnel, it's not that easy to find a second dissection plane at all. Actually go underneath the previous laceration. So what happened to me in this case is I went too deep. So I went too deep and I had a premature entrance when making my tunnel. So sometimes I like to think, if I have to choose between complications, I always want to choose premature entrance because I want to have actually some tissue that will help me to close the eyes in case I need stitches. If it lacerate or too thin or too superficial, you're not going to have any tissue for actually closing the eyes, and it becomes a real nightmare to close an eye with a very superficial tunnel where tissue is going to be like lacerating. So in this case, I had a premature entrance, but I say, okay, let's go ahead, make the tunnel. Afterwards, I always tell them hydrosection, nuclear rotation, always take off your hooks before because you are actually pulling the iris to the cornea and you're not going to be able to dislocate the nucleus. Afterwards, I dislocated the nucleus. It was a big, dense nucleus. And as the panel just mentioned, this is the kind of cases where you want like M6 technique on your side. Even though you could fake this, you will need like a lot of energy. You would do like a lot of endothelial damage. So take out the nucleus. And then after washing all the loose cortex, I saw there were some calcifications in the posterior capsule. So there was a lot of fibrosis. Posterior capsule didn't look that good. So I tried to do a posterior capsulorhexis also, but as you can see, it was not that firm and stable. They were gonna do vitrectomy. So I just say, okay, retina guys, retina surgeons could go ahead and do the posterior capsule with vitrector. So I put in a 3-piece IOL and I sutured the tunnel at the end because I had a premature entrance, there was a tunnel laceration, and this patient was going under vitrectomy. So I don't want to take much time. Sadly, even though they make the posterior capsulorhexis with a vitrector, sadly, retina was in a very visual outcome. Anterior segment looked good, but retina didn't cooperate. So this is the kind of thing I wanted to share with you. I think even for experienced surgeons, it is actually advisable to have someone actually mentoring you for your first cases, and especially for the tunnel construction. I think tunnel construction is the milestone for M6, and all the other steps are really similar to phaco, so most of the surgeons won't have any trouble. But for tunnel construction, some piece of advice, be patient with yourself. There's actually a learning curve for knowing how to construct a self-sealing tunnel, a waterproof tunnel, but I think it is actually worth it to try it and learn this technique. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So excellent presentation by Dr. Sunil, Dr. Deepak Megur sir, and Dr. Pamela. So I invite Dr. Anil Shah sir to please comment.
Actually, all the techniques shown in this SICs are very good, and they are really a learning for all of us. Though we are so senior surgeon, but at each time we watch a cataract, it is a challenge to us that it should not go wrong. Dr. Megur sir has shown a very nice technique of converting phaco to SICs and then taking out the nucleus and giving 6/9 vision. That is a wonderful video he has shown. And also, Dr. Pamela has shown us the video in which they have got a complicated cataract and they have managed it very nicely with SICs. These are all very basic and important techniques. And SICs is definitely a bailout technique for all the types of phaco surgery where you get a complications. Thank you very much.
So, yeah, sorry, and somebody was trying to tell, I interrupted.
And if time is there, why Anil, show your snare? At least that will be a good thing. If you have got a video, just show.
I will try to share the video. 1 minute, sir.
Yeah, sure, sir. Meanwhile, we'll take comments.
I'll try to share.
Would you like to comment something?
Wonderful presentations, and I must take the opportunity to thank Sunil because he's my mentor in MSICS. He has helped me a lot, and this scleral tunnel tips that he showed in the so expertly showed on his video were my, let's say, my mainstay way to learn. And he put all these tips on a list, and I began to follow, and I could improve my techniques so much. So that was, I asked him to show. You must show this on the webinar because it's wonderful. And Dr. Deepak just showed us how important it is to learn MSICS, if at least to know how to bail out of a difficult FACO situation. So it was a wonderful presentation. Thank you. And Dr.
I will share my screen.
Yes, sir.
Sure, sir.
1 minute.
Dato, this Anil has developed a technique. This is snare technique. Yes, snare is invented by him.
Can you see my video?
Not
No,
yet.
not
So
yet.
your
Not
screen
yet.
is not shared yet.
Okay. One minute.
Sure, sir. Till that time, maybe if somebody wants to comment something.
I think, may I comment? I think they were
sir.
masters, all these three speakers, Dr. Deepak Mego, Dr. Pamela, and Dr. Sunil Tangraj. I think not only straightforward SICs they have shown, but the complications can occur in any procedure. And when the complication occurs, how it's to be done, how it's to be handled, the proper way they have shown. And even each and every step shown by Dr. Sunil. And that was fantastic. That is a great way to learn for the juniors as well as even seniors. They will learn by that.
Can you see my video?
Yes, Dr. Anil Shah.
You just say the division part of it.
Yes. I will go forward. See, this is the nucleus is prolapsed into the anterior chamber. This is little soft cataract, but the nucleus is now prolapsing. Sodium hyaluronate is used to make the chamber deep, and also it is very good when we are using snare. The incision size is 3.5 millimeter incision only. Now this is my snare which I have devised. It has got a hole and a wire loop. So intraocular bisection is very smooth with this snare. You can divide the nucleus into 2 pieces, 3 pieces. Even I can divide it into 4 pieces and remove through a smaller incision. So this is a very smooth division of the nucleus. And with the simple McPherson forceps I remove. I do not use weighties. This plain McPherson forceps helps me very easy removal of the nucleus. Those who are initially using snare, they should use sodium hyaluronate because it makes the chamber deep and also it protects the endothelium. So almost any premium lenses can be used with this 3.5 millimeter incision. And this is bimanual cortical aspiration.
Yes. Well.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. I wanted the Brazil, they should see this technique is there. It is India's gift. So Neto, I think you have to now induce Neto to learn this snare technique. Once he learns now, he can train a whole bunch of people who can follow him.
Yes. I hope I'll be able to get some snares with Dr. Anil.
Yes, sir. I will definitely send you, sir.
Hyderabad. I am looking forward to meet all of you there. And last year I was there, and I had a most wonderful time with you. So I'm looking forward to be there.
We had been at the Chandigarh conference, sir, last year.
Yeah.
Yes, Dr. Neto, it was a wonderful webinar. I think for these 2 hours, we thought we are in Brazil only along with you. all Brazilian doctors, and we are together.
Pamela also did a good video that is for a learning problems, and it's a wonderful thing. There was somebody master like her should be there to guide the student. There are so many problems the student can come across. So anyway, thank you everybody. I take leave. My friend's call is coming. I will attend to that. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So we've reached towards the end of the session, and Dr. Neto, there is one question in the chat box.
Yeah.
I mean, I really can't understand that. If you help us interpreting that. Okay, fine. Let me, Rahul, can you please share this question? Let me share it.
It is seen now. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I'll translate.
Sure, Rahul, get sorted. Yeah.
Okay. Neto, you are brilliant. Thank you for the opportunity. Our Brazilian reality is much more alike to India than with the United States. Learning learning MSICS is fundamental. That's what we are trying to show here. And thank you for the comment. And I don't know who posted the comment, but it's let's say I hope that this message get across most of our Brazilian and other surgeons all around the world. Thank you.
This was from Dr. Mariana, if I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Mariana. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just one, Aarti.
Sure, sir.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. See, about this teaching, now when I talk about SICS, I've been training SICS in Myanmar and FACO and in Africa to a lot of people, and luckily a lot of foreigners came. And what I was very pleasant surprise to me, one of my students, and she's associated with the ISMSICS actually now. She's in Singapore. So Singapore Eye Center has sort of changed the program a little bit. See, now they usually teach FACO, right? But before FACO, they are supposed to learn ECC. Now they are changing their program and they are teaching the residents SICS first. So that is a market change. They realized that ECC, yes, there are probably one or two indications you'll come along in life, but most of it, it's a redundant procedure. We have to accept that. Okay, so they are now, what they did is they are putting it into their residency program and they're teaching the youngsters. And this is, next week I will be in actually Ransco, and I'm talking about, converting, just like Deepak has shown the brilliant video. I hope my videos are as good. I have lots of them where I had to use SICS to bail out from my tough FACOs. So I'm actually talking on that. And one of the conclusions I wanted to put forward there is, think about teaching SICS to your residents, and that's a start. So any comments on that?
No, that is what this whole movement is about.
I think what you have told,
a good chapter.
Most of the postgraduates are being taught ECC and directly FACO.
Yes.
In between, they are not teaching SICS, even in big institutes of India. So I think it should be ECC, then SICS, and then FACO. So that whatever complication goes in FACO, the person is able to manage with SICS. And by learning ECC, probably they know how the switches are being taken. Otherwise, they will never learn to take switches. So that's what I think.
Sir, I think teaching ECC is very difficult, actually.
Yeah.
It's more difficult than SICS.
Correct.
SICS is far better. And, this thing about, suturing, you can learn suturing in so many other ways. You don't have to do cut up somebody's eye and do ECC.
Yeah,
I
Dr.
think
Pamela.
SICS, you can learn suturing in many other ways. So, sorry, Dr. Pam, I interrupted you.
Oh, it was pretty much the same. I was wondering and wanted to ask to a panel, do you think we need to teach residents is extra cap if we have M6?
No.
I don't know the answer, but I would dare to say I would go directly to M6. I don't know.
Exactly.
I think ECC is a thing of the past, hopefully, because it has many problems and no advantage over MSICS whatsoever. So there's no point in learning ECC, in my opinion.
So this webinar is being live telecasted on various social medias like our webpage, Facebook and YouTube. So we do have some comments from the other pages as well. So I'll just read out. The comment is from Dr. Sutama Basuki, Dr. Neto, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Dr. Ravindra, very excellent, the real master. I will try to do MSICS technique. Oh, sorry, he wants to say, I have been trying to do SICS technique since 2008. So thank you so much. Then we have a comment from Dr. Swapnil Kothari. 90% of our ophthalmic surgeries are cataracts. If you can't master two technique of your bread and butter, best luck to you all. Then we have a comment from Dr. Bhavesh Solanki. Result of FACO and MSICS is almost same as per as my study of more than 1,000 patients, and it does not make any difference. So why they are promoting a FACO? It's a very big question. Yes, the debate has been there, and I'm sure we will be able to answer some of the questions. Bhavesh Solanki, what will be your experience with toric in superior incision? So, MS Ravindra sir, would you like to take up this question?
Yeah, certainly. I'm 100% temporal surgeon. I actually, it's very difficult to do for me at this point of time after switching over to temporal couple of years ago, 5, 6, 7 years ago. I struggle to do again from superior side. The superior one does produce surprise astigmatism. So whenever there is vidrul astigmatism where the steep axis is vertical, I would always put a toric lens, even if it is half diopter vidrul astigmatism. We go ahead straight away into toric lens. Toric lenses are so cost effective right now, you don't have to really worry about it. But as far as temporal incisions, up to 1 diopter of astigmatism, I'll just go straight with the spherical IOLs, and they give excellent results. The number 2 is, I think I've answered this question. If there is anything else, you can always ask me. Number 2 is Dr. Pamela. Most of the people who learn today SICS do 2 mistakes. One is they try to take from the FACO knowledge to the SICS. They would like to restrict the size of the tunnel, which is number 1 mistake that they do. Number 2 is make the rexis smaller. So we have been taught that the rexis has to be 5 millimeters, 5.5 millimeters. Soft nucleus, it's all right. But nucleus is a little firm, 3 and 4, you will have issues. There is a beautiful technique of doing an oval rexis, popularized by Kiranjit of Amritsar, and that will solve all the problems. Or larger rexis is difficult to make. Small rexis is very easy. If you want to make a 6.5 millimeter rexis, you are worried about runoff, you're worried about irregular rexis, you're worried about eccentric rexis. So you master doing a larger rexis. Overlap of edge of the IOL need not be a must in my experience. I've got a lot of cases where the rexis is really larger. It does not cause any prismatic or any tilt or anything for that matter. So they all are same. So these are the 2 mistakes your residents do. And if you teach them before that these are the things which are restricted for FACO and not for SICS, I mean, they'll have much better results. Even in your case, the resident did a very small rexis. I mean, it's a beautiful rexis, maybe 3 millimeters, 4 millimeters, but then he will have serious problems in getting the nucleus out of the capsular bag. Next thing I would like to definitely say is the Dr. Sahu pointed out it's an artistic surgery, and you need to tune your hands to perform the various aspects. Eye surgery is supposed to be the finest surgery done on human beings. My worry is that if everybody does phacoemulsification and forgets about all other surgeries, their skills or the way they handle, which was so important for our generation of doctors, how to put sutures, neat sutures, how to make incisions, how to make flaps. So we should not be losing that skills, by completely converting to phacoemulsification. That's one strong reason I would always propose to the youngsters when you want to impress them upon why they should take the SICS in addition to the modern technique.
Deepak Megur sir, you wanted to comment something?
Yeah, I wanted to comment on the temporal incision. It's mandatory that if you're planning to do a toric lens, always choose a temporal incision, simply because of the fact that the superior incision induces far more astigmatism, which is always flattening against the astigmatism, and it is uncontrolled. It is much more. And you'll be surprised that even making a 6 millimeter incision in the temporal quadrant, you will not be inducing more than 0.5. So immediate your transition should be shift to temporal incision, and you'll be amazed to see the refractive outcomes from the temporal incision. So once you're confident about your surgical induced astigmatism, which is not going to be significantly high, it's always going to be controlled, which is the case when you do a temporal incision. Then you are migrating or transitioning to toric lens or multifocal lens would not be a thing. So superior incision is not going to be possible. That's the message.
So thank you so much.
Can I ask one question to Dr. Deepak? Dr. Deepak, excellent surgery. Why didn't you make another tunnel temporarily? You're sitting temporarily, and you're very comfortable doing that. You had a phaco main incision at the temporal side, and did you think of making a conjunctival opening there, making a tunnel, and just forget about? I've done it many times. Just forget about the temporal tunnel and do a SICS tunnel in the same place. I've had no problems with that. So would you have done it, or what are your views on that?
So whenever I have a 2.8 millimeter incision, there are some situations wherein my scleral tunnel goes in and joins that plane. So that is when I have a difficulty. So that wound closure will not be so good. But when I make a 2.2 millimeters, it's significantly smaller. In those situations, I'm comfortable. So when the two planes join, then I am a little bit unhappy with the way the wound closure happens there. Then I'll be forced whether to put a suture or not put a suture. So setting temporally and putting a suture is going to worsen the pre-existing astigmatism. So I'm worried about the against the pre-existing. That's the reason I always prefer to shift it superiorly. Although it's much more cumbersome, much more time consuming. But that's the reason why. When the patient already has a pre-existing astigmatism, and my temporal incision, if the scleral incision goes and matches or somehow merges with the clear corneal 2.8, then I'm not so happy with the way the wound closes. Then if I'm forced to put a suture, I'm going to worsen the against the astigmatism. That's the reason when I'm not so sure, I go and do superior incision.
I think I completely agree with Dr. MS. You can put the incision in the same place. I have never had an issue. Never, whenever, even if it, it first of all doesn't join. If it does also, okay, you can put in a suture. And especially Deepak, you had such a big problem. You're worried about your nucleus, whether it's going to drop. By the time you shift and all, and the nucleus goes down, you won't have time to pick it out. So in those situations, better not to do anything. Open up there, take out. I know. See, the biggest problem in India is not in Deepak's place, not in Ravindra's place, especially when I'm in a standalone thing. The biggest problem, if you have a complication where you have to send the patient somewhere else to a retinal doctor or something, it becomes very difficult. Becomes very difficult to counsel the patient, becomes very, very difficult to refer the patient. You know what I'm talking about. You know a situation. But since you guys have a retinal surgeon on hand, they can handle it right there. So we have to think about all that.
Yes. So When we talk about astigmatism, the biggest concern with SICS has been astigmatism, and phaco has been proven in literature as well better than SICS. So we do have customized incision for small incision cataract surgery, which has been very well studied by Dr. Buramani. And he says that you can customize your incision and take either superior, superotemporal, and even superonasal along with temporal, and give the excellent result, and even customize the incision to correct the pre-existing astigmatism. So this study was published in recently in IJO, Indian Journal of Ophthalmology, and it was very well received when we discussed this with the Russian chapter of ISMSICS. So I think we have reached the time. And Dr. Neto, if we don't have any comments, should I give vote of thanks? Yeah. So I would like to thank core team of ISMSICS, our chairpersons, our speakers, and our Brazilian friends. Last but not the least, Team Entodd, for making this evening very, very useful and knowledgeable for all of us. Thank you so much and enjoy your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think it was wonderful webinar. Everybody enjoyed it.
It's a wonderful webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of you.
Good night and good morning once again.
Good night. Thank you.
And good night.
Good day and good night. Good day and good night.
Good night.